And we start round 3. With the 65th overall pick, I have the Bills selecting Equanimus St. Brown, wide receiver out of Notre Dame. They give him some good size, speed, and athleticism at the position. At number 66, we have the Giants selecting Orlando Brown, offensive tackle out of Oklahoma. At number 67, I have the Colts selecting Chukwuma Okorafor, offensive tackle out of Western Michigan. I feel like I butchered that name very badly. With the number 68 overall pick, I have the Texans selecting Duke Dawson out of Florida. With the number 69 overall pick, I have the Giants selecting Ogbanya Okoronkwo, outside linebacker out of Oklahoma. He had a decent combine, kind of disappointing me a little bit, but still decent. Good potential there. And with the 70th overall pick, I have the San Francisco 49ers selecting Anthony Averett, cornerback out of Alabama. And with the 71st overall pick, I have the Denver Broncos selecting Kerryon Johnson, running back out of Auburn. Should be a good depth signing right there, potential day one starter. With the 72nd overall pick, I have the New York Jets selecting Austin Corbett, guard out of Nevada. And with the 73rd overall pick, I have the Dolphins selecting R.J. McIntosh, defensive tackle out of Miami. With the 74th overall pick, I have the San Francisco 49ers selecting Deshaun Hamilton, wide receiver, Penn State. And with the 75th overall pick, I have the soon-to-be Las Vegas Raiders selecting Shaquem, the one-handed monster Griffin, outside linebacker out of UCF. This guy could very well be a first-round talent if someone wants to reach for him. He should be an outstanding player. Don't let that one hand fool you. He is dominant. With the 76th overall pick, we have the Packers selecting Josie Joel, inside linebacker out of Iowa. And with the 77th overall pick, I have the Bengals selecting Isaiah Wynn, guard out of Georgia. With the 78th overall pick, I have the Chiefs selecting Anthony Miller, wide receiver out of Memphis. And with the 79th overall pick, I have the Cardinals selecting Marcus Allen, safety out of Penn State. And with the 80th overall pick, I have the Texans selecting Tim Settle, defensive tackle out of Virginia Tech. And with the 81st overall pick, I have the Cowboys selecting Terrell Edmonds, safety out of Virginia Tech as well, back-to-back Techs. With the 82nd overall pick, I have the Lions selecting Alex Kappa, offensive tackle out of Humboldt State. And with the 83rd overall pick, I have the Ravens selecting Will Clapp, center out of LSU, to improve that offensive line, like I said earlier. And with the 84th overall pick, I have the Chargers selecting Tavares McFadden. I forgot to write down his position, because I'm a crazy motherfucker. I apologize. And with the 85th overall pick, I have the Panthers selecting Duke Ejiofor, defensive end out of Wake Forest. And with the 86th overall pick, I have the Chiefs selecting Frank Ragnow, center out of Arkansas. And with the 87th overall pick, I have the Rams selecting Darius Leonard, outside linebacker, SC State. With the 88th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select Brandon Parker, offensive tackle, North Carolina A&T. Didn't even realize that was a school. And with the 89th overall pick, the Titans select Mason Cole, guard out of Michigan. With the 90th overall pick, the Falcons select Mike White, quarterback out of Western Kentucky. With the 91st overall pick, the Saints select Marcel Aitman, wide receiver out of OK State, to replace Willie Snead. With the 92nd overall pick, the Steelers select Kaiser White, safety out of West Virginia. And with the 93rd overall pick, the Jags select Luke Falk, quarterback out of Washington State, in case Blake Bortles does flunk. 94th overall pick, we have the Vikings selecting Troy Fumagalli, tight end out of Wisconsin. With the 95th overall pick, I have the Patriots selecting Josh Sweet, defensive end out of Florida State. With the 96th overall pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, I have the Bills selecting Jaron Christian, offensive tackle out of Louisville. And again, I forgot the position in college. With the 97th overall pick, the Cardinals select Jeff Holland. I very well do apologize for forgetting this stuff. With the 98th overall pick, we have the Texans selecting Joseph Noteboom, offensive tackle out of TCU. With the 99th overall pick, the Broncos select Dalton Schultz, tight end out of Stanford. And with the last pick in the third round, we have the Bengals selecting Jalen Samuels, fullback out of NC State. Now that concludes the third round of the draft. Now we commence with the fourth round. With the 101st pick in the NFL draft, I have the Packers selecting Nick Chubb, running back out of Georgia, and at this point, this would be a tremendous steal. With the 102nd pick, the Bucs select Tyquan Lewis, defensive end, Ohio State. With the 103rd overall pick, the Texans select Kimoko Tursey, defensive end, Rutgers. With the 104th overall pick, the Colts select Simi Cobbs Jr., wide receiver, Indiana. With the 105th overall pick, the Chicago Bears select Deshaun Elliott, safety, out of Texas. With the 106th overall pick, the Broncos select Jamarco Jones, offensive tackle, out of Ohio State. With the 107th overall pick, the New York Jets select Royce Freeman, running back, out of Oregon. With the 108th overall pick, the Giants select Will Richardson, offensive tackle, out of NC State. And with the 109th overall pick, the Redskins select Chase Linton, quarterback, out of Marshall. A reach, but I think it's okay to reach at this point. With the 110th overall pick, the Raiders select Christopher Herndon, tight end, out of Miami. And with the 111th overall pick, the Rams select Breeland Speaks, defensive end, out of Mississippi. With the 112th overall pick, I have the Bengals selecting Chad Thomas, defensive end, out of Miami. And with the 113th overall pick, I have the Broncos selecting Javon Roland Jones. Forgot the damn position and college yet again. And with the 114th overall pick, I have the Browns selecting Dimitri Flowers, fullback, out of Oklahoma. With the 115th overall pick, I have the Chicago Bears selecting Deion Kane, wide receiver, out of Clemson. With the 116th overall pick, I have the Cowboys selecting Jalen Holmes, defensive end, Ohio State. With the 117th overall pick, the Detroit Lions select Matthew Thomas, inside linebacker, Florida State. With the 118th overall pick, the Ravens select Kalen Ballage, running back, Arizona State. With the 119th overall pick, the Chargers select Wyatt Teller, offensive guard, Virginia Tech. With 120th overall pick, the Seattle Seahawks select Kevin Tolliver, cornerback, LSU. With the 121st overall pick, the Bills select Mark Walton, running back, Miami. With the 122nd overall pick, the Chiefs select Tony Brown, cornerback, Alabama. With the 123rd overall pick, the Dolphins select Kyle Lauletta, quarterback, Richmond. With the 124th overall pick, the Chiefs select Adi Arunya, outside linebacker, Tulane. With the 125th overall pick, the Titans select Jaleel Scott, wide receiver, New Mexico State. With the 126th overall pick, the Atlanta Falcons select Aaron Stinney, offensive tackle, James Madison. With the 127th overall pick, the New Orleans Saints select Godwin Igwebuike, safety, Northwestern. With the 128th overall pick, the 49ers select Derek Noddy, defensive tackle, Florida State. And with the 129th overall pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Maine-iac, guard, Southeast Louisiana. I know I butchered his name, I very well do apologize. And with the 130th overall pick, the Philadelphia Eagles select Michael Gallup, wide receiver, Colorado State. With the 131st overall pick, the Dolphins select Tigray Scales, inside linebacker, Indiana. With the 131st overall pick, the Eagles select Nyheim Hines, running back, North Carolina State. With the 133rd overall pick, the Packers select Dorrance Armstrong Jr., defensive end, Kansas. With the 134th overall pick, the Cardinals select Dante Pettis, wide receiver, Washington. With the 135th overall pick, the Rams select Toby Weathersby, offensive tackle, LSU. With the 136th overall pick, the Rams select Nick Nelson, cornerback, Wisconsin. And with the last pick in the fourth round, the 137th overall pick, the Dallas Cowboys select Ian Thomas, tight end, Indiana. It's a possible James Whitman replacement. And that concludes round 4. Now we start the 5th round. The draft is about halfway done. With the 138th overall pick, the first pick in the round 5, the Packers select Taylor Hearn, guard, out of Clemson. With the 139th overall pick, the Giants select Quentin Meeks, cornerback, out of Stanford. With the 140th overall pick, the Colts select Jerome Baker, inside linebacker, Ohio State. With the 141st overall pick, the Seattle Seahawks select Bo Scarborough, running back, Alabama. With the 142nd overall pick, the Redskins select DJ Reed, cornerback, Kansas State. With the 143rd overall pick, the San Francisco 49ers select Deontay Burnett, wide receiver, USC. With the 144th overall pick, the Bucs select Azim Victor, inside linebacker, Washington. With the 145th overall pick, the Bears select Lowell Latulalele, defensive tackle, Utah. With the 146th overall pick, the Seahawks select Nick DeLuca, inside linebacker, North Dakota State. With the 147th overall pick, the New Orleans Saints select B.J. Hill, North Carolina State. But I didn't write a position, because I'm an idiot. And then with the 148th overall pick, the Steelers select Kurt Benkert, quarterback, Virginia. With the 149th overall pick, the Broncos select Desmond Harrison, offensive tackle, West Georgia. With the 150th overall pick, I have the Cleveland Browns selecting Trey Quinn, wide receiver, SMU. With the 151st overall pick, the Bengals select Cody O'Connell, offensive guard, Washington State. With the 152nd overall pick, the Cardinals select Josh Adams, Notre Dame. And 153rd overall pick, the Lions select Skylar Phillips, offensive guard, Idaho State. With the 154th overall pick, the Ravens select Hercules Mataafa. I'm sorry I pronounced his name wrong. Outside linebacker, Washington. And with the 155th overall pick, the Chargers select Antonio Calloway, wide receiver, Florida. With the 156th overall pick, the Seattle Seahawks select Riley Ferguson, quarterback, Memphis. With the 157th overall pick, the Jets select Tyrell Crosby, offensive tackle, Oregon. With the 158th overall pick, the Bengals select Marquise Haynes, outside linebacker, Mississippi. With the 159th pick in the NFL draft, the Raiders select Kamari Cotton Maya, safety, Iowa State. With the 160th overall pick, the Broncos select Chris Worley, inside linebacker, Ohio State. With the 161st overall pick, the Panthers select Christian Campbell, cornerback, Penn State. With the 162nd overall pick, the Titans select Justin Lawler, defensive end, SMU. With the 163rd overall pick, the Redskins select Danny Johnson, cornerback, Southern. With the 164th overall pick, the Saints select Sean Walsh, offensive guard, Iowa. With the 165th overall pick, the Steelers select Tyler Conklin, tight end, Central Michigan. With the 166th overall pick, the Bills select Scott Quessenberry, guard, UCLA. With the 167th overall pick, the Vikings select Devontae Harris, cornerback, Illinois State. With the 168th overall pick, the Seahawks select Michael Dixon, punter, Texas. With the 169th overall pick, the Eagles select Dorian O'Daniel, outside linebacker, Clemson. And with the 170th overall pick, the Bengals select Brett Toth, tackle, Army. And with the 171st overall pick, the Cowboys select Deidrin Senat, defensive tackle, South Florida. With the 172nd overall pick, the Packers select Jordan Whitehead, safety out of Pittsburgh. And with the 173rd overall pick, the Raiders select Braxton Berrios, wide receiver out of Miami. And with the 174th overall pick, the last pick in the 5th round, the Packers select Traquan Smith, wide receiver, UCF. This closes out the 5th round. Now we start the 6th round. With the 175th overall pick, the Cleveland Browns select Daniel Carlson, kicker, Auburn. With the 176th overall pick, the Rams select Joe Osman, defensive end, Central Michigan. With the 177th overall pick, the Houston Texans select Colby Gossett, offensive tackle, out of Appalachian State. With the 178th overall pick, the Colts select Darius Phillips, cornerback out of Western Michigan. With the 179th pick in the draft, the Jets select Dane Cruikshank, cornerback out of Arizona. With the 180th overall pick, the Bucs select Brian Allen, guard, Michigan State. With the 181st pick, the Bears select Bradley Bozeman, center, Alabama. With the 182nd pick in the draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Andrew Brown, defensive end, Virginia. With the 183rd pick, the Rams select Javon Wims, wide receiver, Georgia. With the 181st overall pick, the 49ers select Jake Weinecke, wide receiver, South Dakota State. With the 185th overall pick, the Raiders select Trevon Henderson, safety out of Hawaii. With the 186th overall pick, the Packers select Quinn Blanding, safety out of Virginia. And the Bills, with the 187th overall pick, select Peter Colombai, outside linebacker, Stanford. With the 188th overall pick, the Browns select Cedric Wilson, wide receiver, Boise State. With the 189th pick, the Saints select Isaac Yiadom, cornerback, Boston College. With the 190th overall pick, the Ravens select J.T. Barrett, cornerback, Ohio State. And yes, I said quarterback, Ohio State. With the 191st overall pick, the Chargers select Van Smith, safety, out of Clemson. With the 192nd overall pick, the Cowboys select Uchenna Nwosu, outside linebacker, USC. With the 193rd overall pick, in their second pick back-to-back, the Cowboys select Zachary Crabtree, offensive tackle, out of Oklahoma State. With the 194th pick in the draft, the Rams select Jameel Denby, offensive tackle, out of Maine. With the 195th overall pick, the Rams select Brandon Facyson, cornerback, Virginia Tech. And with the 196th overall pick, the Kansas City Chiefs select Jeremiah Briscoe, quarterback, Sam Houston. With the 197th overall pick, the Panthers select Teron Johnson, cornerback, Weber State. With the 198th overall pick in the draft, the New England Patriots select Andrew Onkra, defensive end, James Madison. With the 199th overall pick, the Titans select J.C. Jackson, cornerback, out of Maryland. With the 200th overall pick in the draft, the Falcons select Holton Hill, cornerback, out of Texas. With the 201st overall pick, the Saints select Trevon Howard, outside linebacker, TCU. With the 202nd overall pick, the Bucs select Heath Harding, cornerback, out of Miami of Ohio. With the 203rd overall pick, the Jags select Rock Thomas, running back, out of Jacksonville State. With the 204th pick, the Vikings select Folorunsho Fatukasi, defensive tackle, out of UConn. With the 205th overall pick, the Redskins select Jordan Thomas, tight end, out of Mississippi State. With the 206th overall pick, the Eagles select Galen Robinson, defensive end, Purdue. 207th overall pick, the Packers select Armani Watts, safety, out of Texas A&M. With the 208th overall pick, the Cowboys select Ebenezer Ogundeko, defensive end. I forgot his position again. Yay! With the 209th overall pick, the Chiefs select Contavious Street, defensive end, NC State. With the 210th overall pick, the Patriots select Kike Kude, wide receiver, Texas Tech. With the 211th overall pick, the Texans select David Wells, tight end, San Diego State. With the 212th overall pick, the Raiders select Fred Warner, outside linebacker, BYU. Now we go back to the... With the 213th overall pick, the Vikings select Sean Dion Hamilton, inside linebacker, Alabama. With the 214th overall pick, the Texans select Steve Ishmael, wide receiver, Syracuse. With the 215th overall pick, the Ravens select Poona Ford, defensive tackle, Texas. With the 216th overall pick, the Raiders select Sky Moore, outside linebacker, South Carolina. With the 217th overall pick, the Raiders select Justin Jackson, running back, Northwestern. With the 218th overall pick, the Vikings select Eddie Pinheiro, kicker, Florida. That concludes round 6. The final round of the NFL Draft. With the 219th overall pick, the Patriots select D. Delaney, cornerback, out of Miami. With the 220th overall pick, the Steelers select Vane Talameveo, guard, out of USC. With the 221st overall pick, the Colts select M.J. Stewart, cornerback, out of UNC. With the 222nd overall pick, the Texans select Greg Gilmore, defensive tackle, out of LSU. With the 223rd overall pick, the San Francisco 49ers select Damon Webb, safety, out of Ohio State. With the 224th overall pick, the Bears select Deatrick Nichols, cornerback, South Florida. With the 225th overall pick, the Vikings select Tyrone Crowder, guard, Clemson. With the 226th overall pick, the Seattle Seahawks select Jamon Moore, wide receiver, Missouri. With the 227th overall pick, the San Francisco 49ers select Auden Tate, wide receiver, FSU. With the 228th overall pick, the Raiders select Corey Robertson, wide receiver, Southern Miss. With the 229th overall pick, the Dolphins select Rashard Font, cornerback, Indiana. With the 230th overall pick, the Jags select Tamon Paris, offensive tackle, Stony Brook. With the 231st overall pick, the Redskins select J.M. Scott, punter, from Bama, to replace King. With 232nd overall pick, the Packers select Darren Carrington, wide receiver, out of Utah. With the 233rd overall pick, Chiefs select Kenny Young, inside linebacker, UCLA. With the 234th overall pick, the Panthers select Akeem Coleman, defensive end, Idaho. With the 235th overall pick, the Jets select Mike McCray, outside linebacker, Michigan. With the 236th overall pick, the Cowboys select Matt Linehan, quarterback, Idaho. With the 237th overall pick, the Lions select Trey Matthews, safety, Auburn. With the 238th overall pick, the Ravens select Cole Madison, offensive tackle, Washington State. With the 239th overall pick, the Packers select Keyshawn Berea, outside linebacker, Washington. With the 240th overall pick, the 49ers select Jason Cabinda, inside linebacker, Penn State. With the 241st overall pick, the Redskins select Jake Bennett, guard, Colorado State. With the 242nd overall pick, the Panthers select Jordan Akins, tight end, UCF. With the 243rd overall pick, the Chiefs select Greg Stroman, cornerback, from Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech. With the 244th overall pick, the Falcons select Mike Basile, safety, Monmouth. With the 245th overall pick, the Saints select Andrew Trombetti, defensive end, Notre Dame. With the 246th overall pick, the Steelers select Sion Tuahema, defensive end, Southern Louisville. With the 247th overall pick, the Jags select Andrew Vollert, tight end, Weber State. With the 248th overall pick, the Seahawks select Chase Edmonds, running back from Fordham. With the Bengals select, with the 249th overall pick, Duvante Lampkin, defensive tackle, Oklahoma State. And with the 250th overall pick, the Seahawks select Tevin Blanchard, safety from Texas A&M. With the 251st overall pick, the Chargers select Aaron Davis, cornerback out of Georgia. With the 252nd overall pick, the Bengals select James Hearns, outside linebacker, Iowa. With the 253rd overall pick, the Bengals select Alan Lazard, wide receiver, Iowa State. I apologize, Hearns, I believe, is from Louisville. With the 254th overall pick, the Cardinals select Casey McDermott, offensive tackle out of Miami. With the 255th overall pick, the Bucks select Quadri Henderson, wide receiver out of Pitt. And Mr. Irrelevant, 256. With the 256th pick, Mr. Irrelevant, Jordan Thomas, selected by the Atlanta Falcons, cornerback from Oklahoma. And that concludes the 2018 NFL Draft. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. If you want to know the players I forgot their positions in colleges for, I will list them in the comment section down below. All you have to do is ask, and I'll make that list for you as soon as possible. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I apologize if this video was too long. If you're watching this and it wasn't that long, chances are I split it up into 2 parts. But if not, I hope you enjoy. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you are new. And I'll see you in the next one. Let's enjoy the draft. Peace.